Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to issue 54 of the Script Heroes podcast.
The show where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasonowski, and I am the writer of Janitor Hero, Cunning Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I am Katie Markham, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. We have some wicked pulls for you today. We've got Batman and Robin, number 16, Minor Arcana, number 4, Batman Dark Patterns, number 1, Laura Kinney, Wolverine, number 1, and the Creepshow Holiday Special.
That's right, and if you enjoy any of those reviews or anything else in today's episode, you can follow the pod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at the handle Script Heroes Pod. Or you can find me personally across all the same socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm everywhere as Katie Markham Pro.
Let's get into the news. Okay, so this week we're going to be talking about some news from some friends of the podcast.
Ooh.
We're going to be talking about the co-writing team of Tim Daniel and David D.B. Andry, who have just had a new Mad Cave series announced, working with artist Alex Sanchez, colors by Kurt Michael Russell, and lettering by Justin Birch. This book is called...
I'm sorry to immediately derail.
Well, I can't even tell them what the title is.
I'm sorry, you're right. Go for it.
No. Okay, it's called Crush Depth. But yeah, you go in now before I give us more information.
DB keeps posting creepy shit from like the aquarium, and is like, yeah, this is in the book. Yeah, look at this freaky little guy. I went to the aquarium. This freaky little guy is in the book. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited to be freaked out by little guys. Like he's posted weird what are those? They make the fossils, you know, the very iconic underwater fossils. It's like a little pill bug with a bunch of legs.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's called.
It's like a eukaryote or something. No, that's a type of cell.
No, right. I was ready to go with it.
I've also seen they've done some covers and oof.
Yeah, the covers are crazy, and they're doing corner boxes, like personalized corner boxes to the specific variant cover, which is super rad, super cool.
Love
such
that.
A cool thing to do. Also, it has like a tagline on the cover that's "Breathe Deep," which I just love.
Okay, so underwater things scary as hell, just like baseline. If you're not afraid of things underwater, you're the one who's wrong. That's not our domain. I am really excited for this to freak me the fuck out.
Yeah. Do you want the blurb?
Yes, I'm so
obviously
sorry.
You're familiar with this. This isn't our usual thing where you have no idea what I'm talking about, and because again, these are friends and these are people who've been on the podcast, so obviously even Katie, who's notoriously not kept up on stuff, knows that this exists.
But
let me give us a little blurb here.
Please do.
Yeah. Two brothers locked in a sibling rivalry wrestle for command of a massive nuclear submarine, the Absolution. In a near future irrevocably altered by climate change, Chief Science Officer Leanna Pierce finds herself not only caught between the Wilder brothers, but drowning in her fear of the surface world. When something alien infiltrates the Absolution and upends the balance of power, Leanna is left with only two deadly options: reaching the toxic surface world or steering the sub into the unforgiving abyss. And Crush Depth. Breathe deep.
Ooh, so good. So good. One of my favorite movies of all time is John Carpenter's The Thing. I love a nice, like, I'm not going to call it a bottle. What's like the movie equivalent of a bottle episode?
There is, because like the premise of a bottle episode is that unlike the normal show, it's like
I know, but
cut
like,
off.
Is there not a word for like a movie that all takes place in like one room?
It's called it's like called a one set or something like that. Place. There's a better, I think there's a better term. It's not one set. It's like
but
one.
I
it's
love
one
that kind of concept. Whether it's TV, movies, comics, I think that's so rife and rich. As like, I feel like I say this all the time, but as like a huge fan of like character work, when you have something like that, you know that the characters are really going to be potent on the page, and that's what's going to be driving all this. And we know from Morningstar, they are so good with like the very complicated and real dynamics of people and the way that those people show up on the page and like really come off of the page. I'm super hyped for this series.
Me too. I mean, like already the covers look phenomenal. The interior pages that I've seen have like a really distinctive feel to them.
I don't think I've seen
such
the
a fan of.
interiors.
You haven't seen any of the interior pages? I thought you said
so.
DB was. I thought you said that you'd seen DB shit. So yeah, there's a few interior pages
Maybe I was.
that were released with
I
it.
also am notoriously like I hate spoilers of any kind. So he
Okay.
was posting pictures of the literal giant bugs, and I was just like, "Oh, don't want to look at that because spooky bug."
Gotcha.
Um,
Yeah.
and
There's some
also, I
interior
would never
pages out
click on a
there.
page. I'm not here for
No, that's fair.
previews.
That's fair. That's fair. I think it looks incredible. Like you said,
Hell
we
yeah!
know that DB and Tim are incredibly talented writers. And I think that this is certainly going to be covered on the pod. And
Oh yeah.
when it is, we can hopefully have a real good time with having a real good time with like their kind of book, which is always kind of. I don't know if this from the blurb sounds like it's straight up horror. Like this, I think this is gonna be
Mhm.
more horror adjacent compared to their other books that are more straight horror. That's my guess. This is coming with no actual knowledge of that. I could go full horror, but it feels like it's gonna be more like horror adjacent. At least,
Mhm.
did you get that feeling from the blurb? That was my
I think
my
so.
feeling.
I think it's one of those things where it's horror in the way that I like my horror, where it's like, okay, this is horrifying, but it's not like even Morningstar I wouldn't call like deeply horror. Like
No, that was still
it's
like that was like a psychological, I think,
that's
horror
fair.
thing.
That's
Like
fair.
the
Which
at least
I
most of the point was still like the horror element.
when I say that I'm freaked out by horror, I generally mean like, a re slasher horror type stuff and like,
Yeah,
things that are meant to be like scary physically. So like I'm
yeah.
like psychological horror, that's just beautiful art. What are you talking about?
But this
But yeah, I
feels like it's
think
going to
that
have more of
this
like a straight plot of like, oh,
mhm.
there's the brothers, there's this character that has to actually make a decision based on like the situation. Like I don't know. My vibe is that it's not going to be straight horror based on nothing but this blurb. I could be very wrong, but that's my guess.
Well,
Yeah.
whatever it is, I'm super excited to read it. And
I was well prepared. I
perhaps
would have sent Tim and DB a message before this and been like, hey, can you answer these couple questions about if it's going to be straight, and
well,
then
I was
maybe we
about
could
to
talk
say
about that. But
hopefully we can have them back
yeah.
on the pod to talk about it.
Oh, absolutely. We maybe we can actually like time that better than we did because with when did we have them on with Morningstar? It was when the
With
trade was coming out.
Morningstar, it
That was
was
decently
yeah,
timed.
yeah,
That was
yeah,
decently
yeah,
timed.
yeah.
I think I was thinking when we had DB on. I don't think that was well timed for him with anything. We just kind of like
No,
had him on, and he was like, all these things like coming like late, but there's nothing like right now for anybody to buy, and it's like, we should have
but
timed that better.
I also quite like having friends on after stuff has come out, so we can talk about it
Yeah,
and have
like
engaged.
fully going. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
agree.
in any case, I'm sure that we will be talking about uh, Crush Depth a whole lot
I
with
agree.
great enthusiasm.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm super psyched for this. This is going to be, I think, really, really cool. But yeah, that's actually the only bit of news we had this week. So it's going to be quite a short news segment. But do you wanna move into the polls for the week?
Let's pull it. We got we got books to pull and talk about.
He just did that one so badly. Poor Laura Kinney. I noticed you did not get Pipar's Creepshow variant. You utter friend hater.
Okay, I want you to know, Pipar, I'm talking directly to you. I love your art so much. This one's so Christmassy though.
I'm sorry, Pi. I cared enough to get your
It's the
variant.
holiday
Um,
special. They're wearing Santa hats.
let's go to the polls. Okay, we have 5 books this week. We have the 2024 Holiday Special Creepshow Anthology. We have Batman Dark Patterns, #1. I'm so glad Katie's the one fumbling for books this week.
I'm
Batman and
not
Robin,
fumbling.
16. Minor Arcana, #4. Laura Kinney, Wolverine, #1. That's all 5, isn't it? I said that
Yeah,
like that wasn't the
yeah.
last
You
one.
you didn't change your cadence. That was all 5.
Yeah. But of course, that's not all we picked up. Katie, tell me what else you picked up.
That's all I picked up. I mean, I got Transformers, but I haven't been reading it. That's all I got this week.
I
Jay and
got
I were laughing
Transformers as
about the
well.
fact that so many of the books that we would normally like just start picking up on our own, we're now like, oh yeah, I'll read that. Let's read it together.
So the other book besides Transformers that I have is Green Lantern 18.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah. So that's everything. But do you have
That's
order
everything.
preferences this week, Katie?
I'm gonna say start with Batman and Robin, followed by
Okay.
Batman Dark Patterns. I'd say then
Mm-hmm.
go to Laura Kinney Wolverine,
Mm-hmm.
then Minor Arcana, then Creepshow. That's everything. That's all five.
That's all five. That's all five. I
That's
know.
all
I
five.
just wanted to keep mm-hmm-ing. Which I actually didn't really think about whether or not my mic would pick that up
It
well.
did
I hope it
not. It
did.
did not. So you were
Oh,
just
okay.
staring at me close
Oh,
lipped.
I'm sorry. I just was continuously saying mm-hmm.
Sorry, did you
Um,
just say crusty?
you can't follow up on jokes that happen between segments and people don't know what you're talking
Hey,
about.
gang, Jay he wouldn't stop saying crusty. It's not on
Let's
recording,
what's
but
it? Are we starting with Batman Dark Patterns or Batman and Robin? I don't remember.
Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin. So let's talk about Batman and Robin.
Batman and Robin number 16. As the dynamic duo attempts to solve the mysteries of Memento's recent attacks, Batman begins to fear that his bond with his son and partner is beginning to fracture. Is this simply teenage angst, or is Damian truly pulling away from his father? Meanwhile, Memento emerges from the shadows, and the stone-faced specter of atrocities past makes himself known in the Gotham underworld. The writer here is Philip Kennedy Johnson of Action Comics and Green Lantern War Journal. The artist is Miguel Mendoza of Nightwing, Justice League, and Aquaman. And that's on pages 7 and 8. And I'm sorry, then on pages 7 and 8, it's Carmine Di Giacomencito, which I believe is the flashback. Yeah.
He did it
Of
in the previous
Flash.
issue as well.
Yeah. And Batgirl. The colorist is Marcello Mialo, and the letter is Steve Wands. Jay. We jumped all in on Batman and Robin for this Memento story.
Yeah.
It's hitting presumably the halfway point here. How you
I
feeling?
believe so. Yeah.
How you feeling?
I feel like I need to address one thing before anything else, which is with Miguel Medonca stepping on to art for the first time with this issue. It seems like Damian has aged 5 years
Right? I was going to say
between
Damian grew
the
up
previous
so much.
issue and this issue with his new artist, and I even saw people like comparing another book Damian appeared in the same week to this book. And like it's just clear that Damian is being drawn by Miguel as an age that nobody else is drawing him as in the DC universe.
Yeah.
So like I feel like that needs to be pointed out. I quite like the way Miguel draws the older Damian, but like it's just not consistent with
I
anything.
think what I want to hit on is actually kind of, I'm not going to say nefarious, but like a more kind of impactful thing of it, as opposed to just like, oh, kind of out of continuity. A big part of this book is like at least Damien's story, is how he reacts to that young girl who he kind of like he didn't let the chandelier fall on her, but he was kind of a dick to her, and then he wasn't able to save her.
Yeah.
She's in the hospital now, and I feel like a lot of the emotional weight of that comes from Damien being so young, and like this is a peer of his as opposed to like a 15-year-old who couldn't save an 8-year-old. Like I feel like that does make actually a big difference in the emotional impact of those moments.
I do think Damian is like
I know that he's
14 or
actually
15.
12, but
No, I think he's like 14 or 15. He just always looks like a 12-year-old. Like,
no,
he's just
yeah,
ridiculously short.
he is not 12.
Yes,
John
yes.
Kent was 12. He was he was either 13 or 14 because that's how he was trying to lock John Kent
I think he's supposed
out
to be 14 right now, if I'm not mistaken.
But in any case, the difference being a matter of like 5 years, like you're saying, like a difference of 5 years in how he looks.
Yeah, no, he's always looked really, even on the cover, like look at him right there. Like,
look at that little shit.
Much younger. And so yeah, he just looks all of a sudden, and I don't want this to be the only thing we talk about, I just wanted to hit on that because I think it's a jarring thing to pick up in the middle of an arc, and it's like, why does he look so much older?
Mm-hmm.
And like, honestly, doesn't really look like Damian because of that. Like, it's just not what we immediately associate as Damian.
It's like, that's the right costume, but
yeah. So I wanted to hit on that first. It's just an overarching thing.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, I think this issue has a little bit of a slow start. I don't know that I was super interested in the introduced detective from is she from France?
I'm not gonna lie, I am.
I wasn't super interested in her. I didn't think, you know, there was a super interesting angle there outside of like, oh, she was the initial person like hunting them down, whatever. But once we get past that, I know she's around later, but like once we get
Mhm.
past her introduction and we get into like the Damian and Batman stuff, while I think it progressed a little bit like too fast, like it felt like we kind of jumped to like this point. Like I don't know that this feels like the next step from where we were in the Damian like striking out on his own thing. I still
Mhm.
really like that scene and that
Oh
interaction.
yeah.
And then once we're in Arkham, I think it gets fantastic. Like I think,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
now we're going, and now I'm really invested in this storyline. So it was really a slow ramp up this issue of like I'm completely uninterested at the start to the middle, me being like, I don't know that we quite earned this moment yet, but I'm really enjoying this moment. To okay, this is great. So that was my arc of this issue.
I actually
But I'm
really
interested to hear
enjoyed
your
it
thoughts.
pretty much all the way through. I really like the new detective they're bringing in. I'm a fan of there being like I feel like if he doesn't have tension with Gordon or the GCPD, I like there being someone who's not a bad guy for Batman to have that tension with. Like I think that's a really interesting and fun dynamic to explore in Batman books. But I really want to focus down on the Bruce and Damian interaction where they're like, first I want to say I love the way that Philip Kennedy Johnson has been like showing the training of Batman and Robin. Like I
Oh
feel like
yeah,
when
it's
they're
really cool.
in crime scenes together, when they're working
The freaking
together,
0 year looking training
oh my
suit.
god, ugh, gorgeous. Like the physical gorgeousness of it, but also the way that Philip Kennedy Johnson has been like taking the time and care to like have these moments happen in things that make you feel like, oh yeah, this is like training happening. And
Yeah.
in the crime scenes, the way that we saw him echoing the words of his mentor from France, really wonderful. And I'm gonna tell you, I wanted to vom because I was so sad uh, when Damien had his outburst about Alfred. Because Jesus, Damien's relationship to Alfred makes me cry so much. Like it's such a heartbreaking thing to have had happen. And oh, the like absolutely palpable feeling of Bruce being like, you didn't have a dad to talk to, or I didn't have a dad to talk to, and you do. And Damien throwing back that you had Pennyworth and it's your fault he died. I'm just like, oh, Damien, I'm so sorry, my boy. That shouldn't have happened to you. Oh, that was
Is
so good. That was so
brutal.
good. That was beautiful. And then, like you said, the entire interrogation with Crane. Um, is that? I feel like the groundwork was laid. I didn't mean to say it, but yeah, whatever. Groundwork was laid. That entire scene in Arkham, super super rad, especially with the like.
I think that was easily the highlight of the issue, in my opinion. Like it was
Oh,
just
I
so.
really like the middle. I really like the Bruce and Damien scene.
The thing is like again like in its own context, I think it was fantastic. I just think Damien's jump here from where he was in the previous issue felt a little
That's
far
fair.
in
That's
like
fair.
an immediate like scene to scene thing. So
Very fair.
like contextually it puts it down. Also the fact that Damien, I mean I think just in general me looking at Damien being like you have aged so much since the last issue took me a little out of it too. Especially because like I just genuinely think he doesn't look like Damien a lot of the time. Like
I would agree
it
with that.
throws me off. Like I'm looking at him like in like this panel up here,
Hmm.
and I'm like that I would not have said was Damien if you just like showed me that panel out of context. Like
Yeah.
he looks somewhere between Tim and Jason to me. I don't know, something like that. It looks like
Yeah.
either young Jason or like kind of current Tim. Um,
I get that. I get that. Like even when you look at the flashback moment in that, he looks a
yeah,
lot younger. So I wonder if
yeah.
it's also part of how
Damon's just
he's
always had a
appearing
very
in
distinct
his
look.
suit.
I
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like, and like this didn't have that, so
Agreed.
it made it a little bit little off for me,
That's
but
fair. That's fair.
little things. I just really enjoyed the issue overall. I really
Yes.
like the direction of the story arc. I think it's
God, same.
real exciting. Philip Kennedy Johnson, I think, is really good at building up like stakes and building up kind of
A
like
cool
a
new
climax.
villain.
Building to a climax is what I was trying to say.
Love
Um,
it.
it's a very slow, like his story arcs, and I feel like the story arcs play are like that ramp up.
Hmm.
While I do think we accelerated a lot on this issue, it's still like that. Each issue has felt more intense than the previous one,
Right.
and I think that's a great feeling to have.
Agreed. Absolutely. But are we ready to talk about another Batman
Yeah, two
book.
Batmans in the same week.
Two Batmans in the
Which
same week. Crazy.
can anger some people. What about Batman Dark Patterns? Batman Dark Patterns #1. Case 1, We Are Wounded. A series of sickeningly gruesome murders has sent shockwaves through Gotham. Are these the random works of a serial killer, or is there something more sinister at play? Batman attempts to get to the bottom of the mystery before any more victims are claimed. The writer is Dan Waters of Nightwing, Lucifer, and the Six Fingers. The artist is Hayden Sherman of Absolute Wonder Woman, Chicken Devil, and Detective Comics. The colorist is Triona Farrell, and the letterer is Frank Vidakovich. Katie,
Yes.
you're a big Hayden Sherman fan.
I'm a big Hayden Sherman fan.
You're a big
I
Batman fan.
I'm a big Batman fan.
They are together now.
First of all, want to give a huge shout to Hayden Sherman for working on mainline, not like mainline, but like a Batman book and a Wonder Woman book at the same time. Way to go. Like,
big coup there.
huge props. Yeah, so we've got another book that's introducing us to a new Batman villain, which I think is always a bold move. We've got this super freaky lad, possibly called the Wound Man.
Yeah, you want me to find a picture of?
I actually think maybe no, because it's deeper in.
Spoiler?
Like, I think it might be a little too deep in, because I feel like the really cool thing about this villain is
yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That's fair. But yeah, this is it does feel a lot like an issue 1 to me, where a lot of the front matter of it is building up to this reveal in this kind of action-packed scene. So a lot of it is getting a sense of this Batman, and we're like getting kind of acquainted with where Batman stands in this world. It's very much a world where Bruce and Gordon feel like they're kind of two against the world to me, where it doesn't necessarily feel like Batman's got the big thumbs up from the GCPD, especially once we hit the middle of the issue, which I quite like. I like when, I was just saying it in the Batman and Robin thing, I like when Batman has tension from multiple sides, so it's not just him against the villains, but it's also like the whole premise of this book is Batman with a Gotham that doesn't really support him, and I do like that quite a bit. I like when the people of Gotham are like, you're a freak and bad. We don't like you. I love Hayden Sherman's art. I really do. I think that they do a really fun job. There's not as much of it as we've seen in a lot of their other stuff, where we get really interesting page comps, but we do get some really fun ones that I quite like. I also absolutely love the bold stylistic choice to have Batman with like the kind of glowing bat signal on his chest, always in like the perfectly round sigil. I think that's super duper fun. Yeah, so those are the pages I was thinking of when I was saying that we do get a few. With that like cool circular motif. There's a really fun fight scene that I liked a lot. I think that Hayden Sherman does a really good job with the kind of moments of a fight scene, even if it's not the most like panel to panel energetic. I think that you get a lot of like fun kind of freeze moments, like specifically the one with all of the guns pointing at Batman as he's like crouched down, which I also love in a Batman. Is a Batman with horrible posture who strikes real freaky little poses. That's some good Batman content for me personally. Yeah, I think that it's a little slow to get started. I'm intrigued by the villain. I'm worried it's going to be a little on the nose, but I really liked the Six Fingers. So I have trust in Dan Waters to make this a cool mystery, and we'll see as it unfolds. How did you feel about Dark Patterns?
Yeah, I agree with almost everything you said there. Like, it's definitely a slow start of an issue. It's very much a ramp up type thing, all about kind of introducing this initial villain. You even pointed out like my I think main gripe with Hayden Sherman's art is the panel to panel of the action, which I think is a little weak. But there are great moments in there. Also, when I give Hayden Sherman props, because this is the first time I think I've seen Hayden Sherman not drawing in like their distinctive iconic art style. Like they really went for more like, okay, this is a mainline superhero universe book. Like, I need to be more in line with that.
Yeah.
And I give them major props. I give Hayden Sherman major props for being like, I'm going to do that and doing it very well. Because there's certain artists that only work in the one style, and I didn't know if Hayden Sherman was one of those or not. Apparently not. So,
and like I will say, my favorite thing is Hayden Sherman's kind of wacky, grimier style, like the stuff in Chicken Devil, the stuff in Above Snakes. Love that so much. But there is still a good core to this of that. It doesn't feel like cookie cutter interiors. But you're right that
not
it
at all.
does
I'm just saying it's very much not the like typical proportions and
for sure
type stuff that they hinge at. I also want to point out, I do think Hayden Sherman has given us the greatest bat signal in comics here. It's actually super rad. A like working bat signal that like is on clouds with the middle being the clouds instead of like being a black thing that like so it actually would be like, oh, if you projected light with like a black thing that it's like, oh man, that was rad. I want to give a shout out to that.
All right, gang, tune into last week's episode for our Creator Corner, all about the suspension of disbelief and Joseph's being rattled by everything. Mostly. I
mean, the bat signal is not something I normally get annoyed about, but I am happy that this was like one that actually like would work. Like, I think that's just a rad thing to do.
Super duper, absolutely.
Make something work. Make it work. But yeah, otherwise, I don't want to ramp too much because I just basically agree with everything you said with this, and I think a lot of it's going to depend on where this goes. But I thought this villain was super cool once they were introduced. I don't want to really spoil that. I was like, I really like that, and there's. I don't want to spoil any of it, but it's great.
It's rough because it's at the end and it's super interesting.
Yeah, so, I was going to point out one of like the specific things that was really interesting. I'm like, that's way too big a spoiler.
That's way too big a spoiler.
Yeah. But yeah.
Are we ready to move on to Wolverine?
Let's do it.
Laura Kinney, Wolverine #1. The ultimate mutant defense. Wolverine takes the fight to those who stand as enemies of mutant kind. Laura Kinney was bred to be the ultimate assassin as X-23. She's long left that life behind, but as she encounters mutants being forced to use their powers against their will, Wolverine takes it upon herself to right these wrongs, no matter who stands in her way. The writer here is Erica Schultz of Daredevil, Rat City, and Xena Warrior Princess. The artist is Giada Belviso of Jackpot and Black Cat, Miss Marvel, and Blood Hunters. The colorist is Marcello Mialo, and the letterer is Steve Wands. Jay.
Yes.
We love Erica Schultz.
We do. We do.
You love Wolverine in this house.
I do. I quite enjoy Wolverine.
I have enjoyed the Laura Kinney that I've read, both of Erica Schultz and whoever wrote the Exterminator series.
You've definitely read more Laura Kinney than I have. This is
I
my
read
first
one book that had her as an ensemble member,
which is more than I have.
2 or 3 issues.
I have, heard and counted things. Well, obviously, watched the Logan movie, which is maybe not the best.
Best jumping on point for her.
Yeah. I mean, she's great in that, but I just mean like using external media as like your anchor point is rarely a good idea. But yeah, no, jumping into this issue, there was a bunch of like Krakoa stuff, which I still don't fully know. I know it's like an island thing that like resurrected a bunch of mutants and they were all there for a while.
This is the first time I've learned about the resurrections.
Yeah, I had heard of that because I remember people talking about like, I don't know exactly how it worked, but I remember people talking about how like they should have brought back certain mutants with it, or like they had excuses to do things because of it. I think they did the resurrections because they killed off all the X-Men and like the Death of X thing because they were trying to spite Fox when Fox owned the X-Men. Because as Marvel definitely knew, killing off characters in a comic book definitely makes the mainstream audience no longer care about them.
Yep, classic move.
But in any case, so like the kind of initial stuff was a lot of stuff I was unfamiliar with. But man, you get a lot of story in this. Like this is like a full story in one issue essentially. So that's great. And I did think that it was a very solid story. And I really do like what we set up. I think that's awesome at the end of this issue.
Boo Radley action.
Oh yeah.
You definitely just either didn't hear me or didn't vibe with my joke.
I was just trying to move right on so we didn't get stuck, and then here we are.
Okay.
In any case, I'm lost now. Okay.
What's our
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Randall?
think because like we're moving through the plot so quickly, I didn't get a chance to really like connect with any of the characters or get any
Mm-hmm.
like real vibes on a lot of the characters, which I think was kind of the slight down point for me. It did do the typical like captions things that Erica Schultz did with Daredevil, which were really good. But yeah, I think a little more characterization would have been great. And this is my first time reading Giada Belvizo's art. I do believe that they haven't done a ton. I was looking at the
Mm-hmm.
credits and it was like an issue here, an issue there. Seems very new. But overall, I think there's a lot of cool stuff in this art wise. And I just ripped one of the pages of my issue. That's sad.
Oh
But,
my god! Watch this
but
be
yeah,
like a $10,000 book one day, and Jay's
it's
like, no, my
it's
ribfish.
just it was a solid issue one. I didn't think it,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. So you talk now.
Yeah, so I again have very smattering impressions of Laura Kinney in general, but I've liked a lot of what I've read of her. Like you said, there's not a lot of. I don't think this is really a great, like, oh, you want to get introduced to the character first
Yeah.
issue? Because what we get is a very, like, kind of bold savior of mutants characterization. If okay, I'm gonna say this and it's gonna be a little like, I don't know, maybe haughty or something. I feel like we got a lot of Wolverine characterization and not a lot of Laura characterization,
That's
if that
fair.
makes sense. Yeah. This is like, okay, I get what she's doing when she suits up. I understand what's important to her, but I don't really know who she is, really, which is a bummer because I feel like Erica Schultz's captions are really great at communicating that. But because these were very, like, kind of in the moment captions, it felt like it was a lot more reactive as opposed to cerebral. Which is a bit of a bummer when you're trying to get into a character. I do really like what we got though. Belviso's art is it's like it's very 90s coded to me. I don't know why. Or like maybe early aughts. Um,
Yeah, I think kind of like I think Laura's Wolverine costume feels very 90s.
that's fair. I think it's also because of the way that it's specifically
Like
looking
that
at
looks
people
90s
in
for
their
me.
civvies. I'm just like, oh, this maybe it's because it's a very like timeless fashion they've
And
put them
now
in.
like my centerfold is falling out. This issue is
Oh
just
no, that's
falling
actually
apart.
tragic.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Jay Bird. Um, and
Those
that's
books
not
are
like
shit
always my
quality.
favorite
I'm
art style,
sorry.
but I did
I
really
do need to
like
say
it
that.
here. I think they did a couple of really fun things with the setup. Where is it? There it is. Oh, it is the centerfold actually. Like this
Oh
climbing
yeah,
up the
that's great.
building type thing was a really fun shorthand storytelling move. And so I'm excited to see where this story goes because I really do want to know more about Laura Kinney Wolverine, and I do think that Erica Schultz really is the person to deliver that. So I'm super excited to see where this is going, even if
Very
it
great.
uh, wasn't super apparent in this first issue.
Yeah. But I agree with you. I want a little more Laura Kinney, a little less like Wolverine Savior of Mutants. I think it leans
Yeah,
into something that like is the reason I don't read a lot of X-Men stuff, which is I just think they get a little heavy-handed with the mutant stuff. It's like mutants, mutants. Everybody's like mutant. It's all about how mutants are. Mutants this. I'm like, can they be individual characters as well within
hmm
the like thing?
and
Like
it's
it's
also
just
one of those things.
there's a lot of mutants, and I'm like,
Yeah.
scale back.
Oh man, Wolverine's gonna come and cut Joe's throat out. Um,
That's
but
why the
the
Wolverine books, like a lot of the solo Wolverine books, at least when it comes to Logan, don't feel the need to be on like mutant,
mhm,
mutant, 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 which is why that's the side that I engage
that's
with.
super
It's like
fair.
so I think Laura should be similar, but I don't know what Savior of Mutants that we're gonna get.
Right,
That
yeah. And I think that X-Men also is not the most inviting corner of the comics universe. It's
it's the
like
least inviting,
so
in my
much,
personal
so
opinion.
dense. The lore is so dense on it. There are so many people and so much has happened to all of them. And I'm like, I
Yeah,
am a little guy. I don't know. I'm sorry. But I'm hoping that
it's
this
crazy.
is like becomes a very approachable
I agree.
entrance into Laura Kinney's corner of the universe.
Yeah, I agree.
But are we ready to talk about our next book, which
Minor
is
Arcana.
Minor Arcana?
Minor Arcana number 4. In a desperate bid to free herself of this new curse, Teresa finds herself thrown into the unseen world once again. Delving deeper into the mysterious realm, Teresa uncovers secrets that will prove vital to her understanding of this power, but also finds herself stalked by a dark figure whose presence grows increasingly sinister. The writer-artist of the series is, of course, Jeff Lemire of Sweet Tooth, Black Hammer, and May's book. And the letterer is, at least for this book of the series, Steve Wands, before he will have to, change himself to,
give
what are the other
over
books?
to Steve Cups. Is Cups
Yes,
next?
Steve Swords. Steve Swords, then
yes.
Steve Cups.
Then
and
he'll
then
have to
Steve
change his name.
Pentacles.
Yes.
I don't know. I wish this had a letters column, because I need to submit this to Jeff Lemire and tell him this is very serious. And he needs to make sure that Steve is.
I'm so glad there's not a letters column. Though, real quick, if there was, what would you call it? Oh no.
Parrot Talk.
Ooh, there you go. Tarot Talk is good. You can have that one for free, Mr. Lemire. Minor Arcana, I really, really love this. I feel like it's kind of a Jeff Lemire creator-owned special to make very, like, heady books, where it's like, oh, I'm reading this, and, like, it's a very... I've said this about his books before, it's like, it's a very experiential read, where I'm like, oh yeah, I feel very absorbed on the page when I look at Jeff Lemire's work, which is so delightful. I really liked that this one had a like kind of start to finish regular story inside of it. Like, we have essentially like a little adventure where Teresa is exploring her powers, and we see them work in a way that hadn't been like crazy relevant before, I'm gonna say. But yeah, I thought this was super duper fun. I love Teresa as a character. I love her relationship with her mom. That initial scene in the doctor's office, so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. It's supposed to be, but oh my god, so uncomfortable. Phenomenal. Love that. And then the way that she moves through the what do they call it? The underworld? What do they call it? The unseen world.
Yeah.
The way that she moves through the unseen world is really neat in this one. I liked it a whole heckin' lot. Jay, how'd you feel?
Agree with you. This was a really good issue. I similarly enjoy getting the like more complete story in this issue. I thought that was really, really cool. A lot of the art is just so well done. Like, Jeff Lemire has such a strong sense of what he wants on the page and how he wants it to feel, and he plays with like the way the color comes in different types of scenes and stuff like that. The unseen obviously having a lack of color and all that cool stuff. And then the ending of this issue, which I'm shocked, I know we can't spoil it, I'm shocked you didn't bring it up.
Incredibly exciting for going forward.
Yes, incredibly exciting for going forward. But yeah, it's like I said, like, this issue certainly is a little bit more talkable than like a lot of Jeff Lemire stuff, but it's still like a lot of like what makes it so great is the experience and the way that it feels. But I really like the way the plot moved forward in this one too. Like you said, it's like this little story, and like you get the hint in the unseen of like story that's I don't think it's a serious. So she has this like old school, like what's the real life one? I'm trying to think of
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, thank you. TV show, and there's a puppet in this world that's talking to her, and then she finds out that the puppet is actually the girl's brother, and that kind of leads us into our story where they go to the set of the show and all that. And I thought that was just a really, really nice like lead-in progression to the resolution that we get. And yeah, I really liked it. It was really, really good.
I really liked it quite a bit. This might be my favorite issue of Minor Arcana so far.
I really think I agree with you,
but I really like this one.
I think I agree with you. Yeah, it was very good. Very, very good.
Hell yeah. Jeff Lemire, really good. That's a hot take.
Very good at his job. I don't know that anyone has ever said that before. That's why Boom greenlit what I think is going to be like a 40-issue series or whatever it's going to be.
Something wild. Because to just touch on that for a second, they said chapter 1 was the first 3 issues. We know there's going to be 4 bound up volumes. So like
covers. Yeah, like
you would think covers. At least
it's like 12 per. Yeah. Like that's my guess. Is that bonkers. This is going to be 48 issues.
Which would be rad as hell.
Which is 4 years.
That's 4 years of comic book. Amazing.
Like
just crazy. God bless it. Hopefully we'll be here at the end of it too. That'll be super fun.
I really hope so.
But we have one more book to talk about. And that's the Creepshow Anthology Holiday Special.
Let's do it.
The Creepshow Anthology Holiday Special 2024. First, A New Year's Eve party gets fiendish as writers Teenie Howard of Catwoman and Blake Howard of Punchline and artist Steven Subic of The Riddler Year One will have you crying for your mummy in the new year. Then, beloved comedian Terry Reno revisits a holiday classic from the Petrolhead team of writer Rob Williams and artist Pi Par that quickly takes a shocking turn before a live studio audience. The letterer on both of these stories being Pat Russo. Jay, we love the Petrolhead team.
Yep.
How did you love the Creepshow Anthology 2024 Holiday Special?
Yeah, so obviously we have two stories in here, two very different stories.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like is because I don't know they could have been further apart in like subject matter and presentation, art styles, everything. They were vastly far apart in feels, which I think is great for an anthology like this. This is my first personal Creepshow anthology. I've never read any of the other ones. I don't think that matters, but I just felt the need to say that. But yeah, I'm gonna start with the first story, which is Teenie and Blake Howard's and artist Steven Subic's. I thought this one was solid. I think lacked the like super compelling narrative, which it kind of made up for with like some really cool visuals, which I think was kind of the main.
Was what it was really heavy.
Yeah, it was really like a vibes and a visuals story, which especially for an anthology is super fine, and it worked well, and it was still enjoyable, and I enjoyed reading it. Then we get to the Petrolhead team story, which was just phenomenal. Like, it was so
These
good. It was such a tight narrative for the, I don't know how many pages it was. I'm guessing around 12, but whatever it was. It was a very tight narrative, really, really cool. With a like very strong characterization for such a short, story. A super phenomenal, and despite the main character being a horrible person, not to spoil anything, still a deeply, deeply unsettling ending that I am like still stuck on to this moment. And I say like when books make you feel something is what you want. That ending made me feel shit, man. I was like, oh my god. And the fact that this is the Petrolhead team, because this is nothing like Petrolhead. No. It has none of the vibes, none of the anythings
not a
from
single
Petrolhead.
Car.
Yeah. But holy shit, it was well done in every sense. Pi Par was like it's for such different reasons of why Petrolhead's amazing too. Like it's it's not like, oh, this is like the designs of the cars and the world building and all that. It's just like the facial expressions and the close-ups and the building intensity and then the creep factor. And I don't want to talk about like the specific thing, but like,
yeah,
oh my god,
I mean,
it was
one of the things is on the cover that you have. The way that he did that fucking dummy. So horrifying.
Well, I was talking about like specifically, I'll say how the dummy is done at the very, very end.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you know, you know. If you know,
you know. And it's unsettling. But yeah, you talking about it was just so good. It was so ridiculous. No,
yeah,
one of my favorite
picked this up
stories.
because we love Rob Williams and Pi Par, and so I'm really gonna focus on their story because again, like you said, the other one, fun is the wrong word, but like good anthology story, a vibe.
Vibes.
This first of all, I love the way that this used the I forget what his name is, the like Creepshow man, the framing boy.
Yeah. The guy who like tells the story, the guy who's like the main dude and the
freaky little guy. He's undercover. No, he's not undercover. Yeah, that fella right there. I really like the way that they used him in this. I think that it was a really smooth transition both into and out of the story, which I read the Creepshow anthology that Zoe Thorogood did a story in, and the one that DB did a story in, and they all were also good. I'm struggling to remember them because they were months ago, but I really love the way.
I never ended up reading it. I need to.
It's quite good. If memory serves, again, months ago. And I dedicate a lot of real estate to the stuff we read on the pod because I have to remember to vocalize those.
Yeah.
But yeah, you hit on like most of my points, which is one, characterization, two, Pi Par's art. One of the big things is in Petrolhead, a lot of the time I'm like, yeah, I love the way that he does the cars and the action and all that stuff. And then like the humans are okay, but the robots are really the star of the show. These are well, almost all humans. There is the dummy, but the way that he's so emotive, he's so expressive, and I don't know what quality it is about Pipar's work. I think it's something in the way that he colors. It really gives a wonderful life to these people. Like it feels very every single page feels like there is movement happening, even if it's not like race cars racing or somebody throwing a punch. Everything feels like you're catching someone while they're moving. I love the way that Pi does posing and like composition. It's so great. But yeah, really phenomenal. Enjoyed it so much. I don't know that there's much more to say besides that.
Yeah. Well, it's so different than Petrolhead, which is so important. Like Pi does a very different art style type, vibe for this. Like you said, the humans look, I think, fairly different than how they look in Petrolhead, and at least they get more focus here. And then also like Rob Williams really writes different for this. It's a much more like caption based writing, which isn't in Petrolhead as much. So yeah, I think it shows a great versatility from that team, and it's like, as much as we want more Petrolhead, like also this team could really do anything. I think if they could be like, they could announce that they're doing I don't know what's a very different genre than either of these two things. They're doing a superhero book,
Phineas and Ferb book,
and they're doing the Phineas and Ferb book for paper cuts, and I'd be like, let's get on that.
Let's pick it up.
Yeah, it was really, really good. I'm really glad we decided to pick this up and read it.
Absolutely agreed. My only gripe with both of them, I feel like neither of them leaned hard enough into the holiday. Like we had the holiday, like it's
Rob
fine.
and Pies was
like theirs takes place on a Christmas thing, but I feel like I want a little more holiday for my holiday special.
I was fine with it.
But in any case, it is time for the pull list.
I'm making you start this time.
You're making me start, but that I'm torn.
Tell me what your pull list recommendation is.
My pull list rec. You know what? I've made my decision. My pull list rec, Minor Arcana number 4. It's my favorite issue so far of a series that I really like. And like we said, it's going to be like, we don't know how many, but like probably at least 40 issues. So like get the fuck in now so you can go on a 4-year journey with us. I think that's a really fun book and one worth picking up. How about you, Jay? What are you feeling?
I am going to agree with you. I'm going to also recommend Minor Arcana number 4. It's just such a tight narrative story within the greater story, a great piece of a long-running series. And Jeff Lemire is just really freaking good at his job. So I'm gonna sit here and say I also recommend Minor Arcana. So that's a double, pull list recommendation from us on Minor Arcana. But also, if any of the other books sounded interesting, pick them up too. Good comics made by good people. Yeah,
that's right. But speaking of making comics, it's time that we head over to the Creator Corner. Here we are in the Creator Corner, the part of the show where we sit back, relax, and get to the end of the episode exactly how we do every single week, which is not what we're going to talk about this week. We're going to talk about twist endings. We're going to talk about how to end your book in a way that perhaps your reader won't be expecting, or you've been alluding to secretly, depending on how much of a twist you're doing and how proficient you are with creating twists. Which leads us directly into my first question. Jay, when is a twist, and when is a twist bad writing?
Let me start with saying I was actually just thinking about twists recently, I think it was yesterday. And I think we talked about twists a little bit in the like writing anthologies episode, because I'm a firm believer in twist endings being one of the ways that you can make an anthology story stick with somebody, which is very important. Because I was thinking the other day about the like current landscape of comics versus how it used to be, where it's like, oh, you just do a series and eventually it'd be coming out long enough that people would start to remember you and remember it. Can't do that anymore with like 4-issue minis and stuff. It's like, oh, a lot of times it just goes, and the getting somebody to still be interested by the time the next one rolls around is difficult. So I was thinking, how do you get people to stick around, to stick in people's heads? And I was like, one of the ways is a twist ending. For all the flack that twists get, they get talked about, and that's why you keep getting them, regardless of how they work. Like, they get people to talk, and that's I think one of the most effective things. But to answer your question more specifically, a twist is a twist versus bad writing. When one, it was always the plan, and two, you did not like change the build in a way where you should have diverted from the plan and then just went back because it was always the plan. It has to be the plan, and you have to distinctly build to that plan in a way that is understandable and backwards traceable, but it doesn't necessarily have to be figure outable. Because I think some people say for let's just wait, it has to be something that people can guess. I don't think that's true. It's just something that once people know, I think they should be able to watch it or read it again, and this time when they're reading the comic, it should play differently. It should play out differently in the way that they experience it. So there's my quick initial answer.
No, I think that's a super fair answer. I think a twist is a twist if it feels good. I think that I don't think there are a lot of I don't think there are a lot of rules to a twist that we're going to try to hammer some guidelines down here in this creator corner.
We're talking specifically about twist endings, not just twists, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Which I think is important.
Because, obviously, if you start off with the plan for your twist ending and you execute it well, that's a very well done twist ending. But I think it can also be something that you realize as you're going along. If you realize in issue 3, you're like, oh, this character who I didn't initially have as the murderer can still be the murderer, then it makes sense. And I think one of the things is, like you said, catching yourself in the process of writing to make sure that you haven't gone so far with an ending that it feels like you're cheating people out of one, or that you're laying demonstrative clues in the wrong direction for something. I think if the ending is still open, you're able to make that decision later on if you so choose. And obviously, if it hasn't been created yet, you can always go in and seed those in after the fact. But if you already have all of the art done for issue 1, you suddenly can't go in and change things too dramatically. So I think that it can come in later, provided you haven't given a strong reason in text,
for it not to happen.
Or a too strong reason in text for it to be someone else. Because that actually leads into what one of my other questions is for you, is where do you think lies the middle ground, or the kind of perfect spot, the sweet spot for misdirection, red herrings, and then just flat out lying?
Well, I think there's a few steps. There's a few things there's a few elements here that need to be addressed, because it depends a lot on the type of story. I think the classic one that you're kind of framing the question is in a murder mystery type thing, where you're going to reveal a killer or something, where it's oh, you need to be laying clues for stuff. But the twist ending could also be something that isn't you're going to reveal something. It's just it could be somebody betrays somebody or something like it doesn't have to be something where there was going to be something and now there's something else. It could have been where there wasn't expected to be anything, but then there is something, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
It doesn't have to be replacing one thing with something else. It could be an additional thing. But in the situation in which you are building to some sort of reveal, and the twist is going to be built around that reveal, now is where you kind of talk about things like red herrings or kind of clues and that kind of stuff. And I think the important thing with that is to understand the difference between the way a reader and a writer interpret clues and stuff. Because I think, especially in comics where you have limited space, so it's not like a novel where it's I can bury one clue in each chapter, and it's if you're putting multiple hints to something in a single issue, it's happening every couple pages then,
right?
And versus you writing it where it feels like you're only doing a couple, somebody reading it might become incredibly obvious. I think a lot of things in comics have a thing where it's oh, this became obvious way faster than the writer wanted it to become obvious, because you just don't really get how putting multiple clues in something as a writer is going to become very evident to a reader in comic books. So I think it's very important to understand, like, oh, what is the reader going to take away versus what am I putting in there? So I think clues and red herrings are both best used sparingly, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going to make a little indication that this person, maybe wasn't where they said they were, or like maybe if this person, has like, uh, why am I on? I'm thinking of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Have you watched Brooklyn Nine-Nine here, Katie?
Yeah, some.
Yeah, where Captain Holt's thing is like that he only says contractions when he's lying, and so like something like that's such a simple way to be like, oh, I'll have him, in this one line like throw in a contraction. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
there was a little lie, and then that'll help build things out. So it's even like subtle things like that, but I think used sparingly is the most important
Mm-hmm.
thing with either one. But
No, I think that's a
yeah,
really good read, especially like you're saying in the comic medium, where I think that this is also a medium where
everything's very
everything
condensed.
feels very intentional on the page. Like when it comes to uh, movies or novels, there's so much that's just kind of naturally a part of the setting. Like, there's a sense of, oh, maybe this is like a classic Katie and Joseph thing. Maybe the curtains are blue because they just bought blue curtains for the set. Whereas with a comic, it's like, oh, the colors chose to make those curtains blue, which isn't always the case, obviously. And the curtains being blue is probably not a clue, but it's that type of thing where like it feels so much more handcrafted when you're looking at a comic as opposed to like the kind of suspended disbelief of a movie set or the absolute word vomit of a novel where it's like, oh, these things can get lost, like you said, they can get lost
Yeah.
in all the sound and noise of these other mediums. Whereas comics are a lot more, you're getting these little snapshots. And so it feels a lot more intentional what's in frame, what's in the character's line of sight, what's sticking out on the page. And so, like you're saying, using fewer of those and spacing them out is super duper a boon to the writer. I love that answer. That's a very, very, very good answer.
Can I ask you a question, not to put you on the spot,
Sure.
but just because since we started this, I've been thinking and I'm failing to come up with an answer. Outside of anthologies, because I think comic book anthologies are like so common for there to be twist endings.
Mm-hmm.
Can you think of a comic series or mini series that has a twist ending? Because I'm very much struggling.
I would say that the one hand and the six fingers had a twist, like the like simulation of it all.
No, that felt like the pretty natural ending that it was kind of building to. Um,
That's fair. Let's see.
Maybe
He's putting
that's
me
a
on the
fair thing. I'm
spot.
just
If
I'm
you
just
want to
struggling to
prattle
think
for a
because
sec
like
while I
I
think.
also can think of a lot of like famous twists in comic books, but most of them
Mm-hmm.
are in like long running series, so they happened and then things continued after them.
Right.
So I'm trying to think of, like in the miniseries era, if I can think of a miniseries that ended with a twist ending, and I don't know if I can think of one right now.
I guess
So
the question is, like you're saying, there are many different types of twists. Like the kind of classic whodunit twist is not really a story structure that many stories employ anymore, just because the kind of Agatha Christie esque uh, um, murder mystery isn't like
yeah, I'm thinking of like a betrayal, or like, oh, this person was this character's father. So like anything like at the end that's just like a nice little twist, or like of like, oh, you were actually killing people and not aliens. Um, I can't think of what that movie is, but that's the movie twist in a movie. Um,
I mean, I'm trying to think if I would
yeah.
call the end of I I guess the ain't no grave twist and isn't really a twist as much as it's like an inevitability.
Oh, I mean, it's kind of.
It's
I'll,
kind
I'll,
of a
I'll give you that.
twist. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, I don't
Whereas
want us to just fumble around.
no, for
I was
sure.
interested if you
Yeah.
had one like you were thinking of when you put
Because
this forward. Because like,
the main one I was
yeah,
thinking of was the six figures in the one hand. I think the twist of it all being a simulation all along is absolutely a twist. Like it's not what the book is setting up, even if it like
is it not what the book's setting up? Like we
I mean
have
I would
throughout.
say in
You can
the
say maybe it's not what the one hand setting up, but it absolutely feels like it's what the six fingers is setting up. Like he's constantly talking about how like everything's controlled. And he can see the code of the world and all that. Like,
I mean,
it felt
that's
very much
fair.
like that was what the Six Fingers was setting up for the
That's
whole
fair. And I guess
series.
there is very much a sense of there are two very different types of twists, where one is like the twist for the character and one is the twist for the
Yeah.
reader. And the twist for the reader is certainly not as prevalent, because I think that is that kind of like Christie-esque, like, you've been given all the pieces, now put it together. And
So
maybe
again, like,
that's
I
not
don't know
something
that
that's
that's
super
like,
conducive
again,
to
like, I
the
don't know that
comic
you
book
have to go down
medium.
murder mystery like, again, I'll give you, there's a very famous twist in comic books. Like, Invincible has, I think, maybe the most famous twist in comic books, which is, spoilers, probably not spoilers at the point, that Omni-Man, kills the Guardian. Like, look, twist happens in issue 7, but obviously the book continues from there, and that's like the inciting incident of the series. If you look at the series like as a whole
Right.
series versus like an
But
issue,
like, is it
is
a
basically
twist
the inciting
end
incident
to the
of
arc? I ask, having not read
no, it's not
Invincible.
like there's no like, oh, who killed, like, it's the same issue of like they are killed and then the reveal is the end of that issue. Like, the twist is like, oh, he's not a superhero, he's like,
Like, I guess that also begs the question, is the final issue, like, does that count as a twist ending if it's the last issue in a 6-issue thing? Or does it have to be like at the
I think
very
it's
end of the
actually
last
the
issue?
first issue of the new arc and
Oh, okay.
not
I have no
in theory.
context for
The issue is
the
not
pacing of
connected to
Invincible.
anything else. The issue is very much like its own thing, especially
Okay.
because he moved up the twist from like it was supposed to happen later. So because the book was going to be canceled.
Whoops.
So yeah, but in any case, my point is like, it's not really a twist end, but it's like a twist. So, but like, that's obviously not like a, oh, who done it, and then it's revealed to be him. It's like, no, it's just like, oh, this guy is evil is the twist. Like, it's not
For
something
sure.
that like that had pretty much zero build up, more build up in the show, pretty much zero build up outside of him like being really weird when Mark gets his powers, and you're like, why is he being weird about his son getting his powers? Is he maybe just worried about what that means? It's like, oh no, he's worried because that now means it's time to start his plan to take over the world, and now he has to, kill a bunch of people. So like that, it has a little setup, but my point is like, it certainly exists, but I think twist endings are certainly harder to find in the current miniseries era, which maybe means that it's a good idea, or something worth experimenting with. Because, yes, maybe Morningstar. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it,
Yeah. It's always odd to me to apply twists to like kind of supernatural things.
yeah, no,
Where
that's
I'm like,
super
oh, it was
fair. That's
magical.
super
Well,
fair.
not magic,
I
but like
just, I
kind of.
just, I just,
But yeah,
that
no,
was one that just
I
kind of,
think that could fit in there for sure.
right,
Where
right.
it's a like, I certainly would not have expected the dad to come back. Like, I think that is certainly a twist. It's a happy twist, which you don't
Yeah.
normally get, because again,
Yeah.
most of the time somebody's murdered someone.
But like that's but like, one point that like something like, oh, a family will come back, or even something that's like, you'll have things that are like, oh, this character was, actually your daughter from the future, or whatever, like something
Right,
like that. Like,
yeah.
there's plenty of twists. Is what I'm trying to point, that have nothing to do with like some sort of murder mystery,
For
or
sure.
like
Yeah.
thing that thing that felt like it was building to a reveal. So if you're
Mhm.
not, feel like you're building to a reveal, but you can still lay clues for that. This is what this was all, trying to get to, with at least with the, non Agatha Christie twist thing, which is me trying to say like, it's very different when you're planning clues for something when people are expecting a reveal, and thus they're like in there looking for,
Yeah.
something, versus when they're not. So like, if you're doing a murder mystery, it's like they know somebody's going to be revealed to be that murder. I think very infrequent and small clues are the way to go. But if you're doing, I'm going to use the time travel thing because I think that's an easy
Sure.
example of
Yeah.
like, okay, this is going to be revealed to actually, this character is actually going to be revealed to be the main character's daughter from the future. I say go pretty ham with the clues, because people aren't
Mhm.
going to jump there. So like, have there be a couple moments where this person just like knows things they shouldn't know, and like makes a little weird comment about like, oh, that's just how things are, I assume, whatever. Like, I think go heavier in general. The thing I want to say is go heavier with the clues if they are not like going to
Right.
be
If they're
hyper
not
reveal
looking for
clues.
clues.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that if they don't know a mystery is coming, you can clue them into the fact that there might be something amiss. And that actually brings up a question of, where do you think, how much do you want the characters in your story to be aware that something's amiss. Like if, like, I don't know, your daughter from the future comes forward and says, "Oh wow, do you have a Walkman player for this cassette tape, Dad?" And it's the year 2013, and he's like, "What? Why would, or not Dad, Mr. Green?" There very much could be an in character moment of like, why does she think I would have a cassette player? What, was she raised in a barn or something like that? Like, do you want there to be those in text fingers pointed at the weird things happening?
Absolutely. I think a little slow to where maybe your character seems a little slow, but because you kind of want the reader to get there before the character gets there a lot of the
Right.
time. So maybe like drop the first one where like the character knew the name of somebody who they hadn't been introduced to yet, and it's like, oh, that's a little weird, but maybe the writer just forgot that that character hadn't, met the person, whatever. And then that second time when the Walkman happens, and it's like, oh, that's much more obvious, and then you have the character remark on it. I like after they leave, you have them like turn to the other character and be like, "It was weird, right? Like, what? Why? Why would I have a Walkman? Do I seem that retro?" You know. And then you gotta build up. I really like twists where the character's realization can coincide at least somewhat closely with the reader's realization.
And I
I
think
like
we've talked about that. I don't remember what we were talking about that with, but I'm more of a dramatic irony girly.
Yeah,
I
I've never been a
I
big fan.
I love a good bit of the reader knows and the character doesn't.
Yeah, never loved that. Because I think it hurts because I think in almost all examples of that, you get to the moment of where the character finds out, and I am always of the thought of like, damn, that would have been a sick reveal if we didn't know yet. Like that would have been such a good reveal. And it's not that it can never be done well. But yeah, I think that there's great moments to come from like when your reader's like fairly certain they're getting somewhere, and like maybe you have like, oh, now you have like your team of characters like starting to figure things out, and they're even going clue. I'm also a big fan of like the one crazy character who's actually like the only one picking up on obvious stuff, as long as you don't get to the point, because there's the overdoing it to where like characters are shitting on them so much for no reason when they are making very good points, and you're just like, okay, this is like very clearly a written thing, because nobody in the
Yeah, I
real world would be
think
like faced with this much evidence and just being like, no, it's fine. Like, so there's a balance there.
also I think we had an interesting instance of that with Stargazer, where if you remember the Mad Cave book about
I do
the
remember the
yeah
Mad Kid
okay
book. Yeah.
yeah
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, our crackpot conspiracy theorist character is being framed as a crackpot conspiracy theorist, but also they're exactly right.
Yeah.
So I think having your character who's like skeptical or a conspiracy theorist can be a little dangerous because it can come off as a
Yeah,
little.
mine wasn't going like full conspiracy. It's like when you have the one character who's like picking up on the fact that this new person is like off, and then like but you've got the team that's like, yeah, no, they seem like a good dude. And I think if you do it like slowly enough to where and like you don't overwhelmingly just have them shit on the one character, where it's like they're listening to the concern stuff, and then you can like slowly have more people start to kind of figure it out. You build up your little team of like people who are like, now we're gonna figure out what's up with this person. It's actually like, they're from space, and that's a fun little thing.
That's a fun little twist. We love
That's a
space.
fun little thing. But yeah, no, I think a big thing you have to do if you've decided you're gonna do a twist ending is figuring out beyond like the reveal to the audience. If you're like, okay, the twist is coming for the audience at the end, the question is like, okay, how does that play for the characters? Because you can't just like ignore the way the characters should experience learning information because you don't want to like interfere with the reader experiencing information. So you have to make sure that within the world your characters are still like logically engaging with this thing, because if you're dropping clues everywhere for the reader and your characters are just like, oh, I wonder why this person keeps fucking up what things happened this year. You're like, like, I don't know why they said that, they thought, 9/11 was last year and it's, 2011. And it's like, that doesn't make any sense, So there's a point where you will, because you're trying too hard to like make the twist happen, you'll kind of negatively impact your characters. So
yeah, no, that's a really good concern to have of like, okay, because I feel like 9 times out of 10, or even like 99 times out of 100, the twist is not going to be about your main character. Like that's like in our like classic unreliable narrator stories and stuff. It's like, oh, the twist is you were crazy actually.
You were the one killing everyone.
Yeah.
It's like
Um,
the killer was me.
but so when you're coming up with a twist ending, I think that it's really important to think about, like you're saying, how that impacts characters, both in terms of how they receive the twist and in terms of how that like changes their world. Like if this person is actually your character's daughter from the future, that is, that should be relevant to what's going on in the story, right? Like you don't
That
want
should be like that's
Omni-Man.
happening in a story where they're building up to something big, and this character's been trying to stop the main character from like doing something or whatever. And we
Yeah,
didn't know why until all of a sudden it's about to happen, and they have to reveal who they are despite potential problems. And you find out the future's like really fucked up, and they're trying to stop it from happening. And it's like there's your big thing, It's like
exactly.
that's the big
And
climax. Perfect.
yeah, and so you want to make sure that you're doing this in a way that is kind of serving your main character, like not to the detriment of your twist character or whatever. Whatever we want to call that person or entity or, plot device. Like you don't want to devalue what they have going on.
Plot
Uh
device character.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um but it should all be in service of your main character. Like the
absolutely.
Omni-Man reveal would be far less important or far less effective if he wasn't Grayson's dad. Like if it's just like, oh, the superhero I looked up to
Yeah.
is like just now the monster of the week, if that makes sense. Like you want
No,
to have that
absolutely.
personal connection.
Yeah.
Um, or you want to form that personal connection. Like classic twist, Luke, I am your dad. That creates that new personal connection, which is that's how James Earl Jones sounds, right?
Even the words were correct, so not at all.
I'll have you know, I have enough nerd cred to know that it's actually no, I am your father, and not Luke. So like,
I think that's like one of the things that now is like so well known to the point
oh
that
yeah,
like anybody who's like,
exactly.
it's actually not. It's like yeah, everybody knows it's
It's
not
like,
now.
oh,
Like
did
that's
you know that
become
Viggo
so well
Mortensen
spread.
actually broke his toe when he kicked that helmet? Classic nerd trivia. Uh, but that was oh right, your twist. I think I started asking this question like
Yeah,
5 minutes
there's your
ago,
twist
and
ending of
then
a
and
middle
then
movie, so
that's what
that's
I
a
was gonna say.
thing.
Do you think that your twist ending, um, how do you reckon that versus a like mid book twist?
Yeah, I mean a twist ending has to a twist ending has to have the foreshadowing up front because you don't
Mhm.
get after in a long run series, you don't need that much foreshadowing if you can like really fill it in on the back end. Like you
Right.
don't want it
Yeah.
to feel like you have to like undo things or change things that came before. It's like this is clearly not expected, but you can absolutely like do it without a lot of groundwork being laid. Again, like the Omni Man twist. Again, is it better in the TV show where there is more groundwork, laid? Though I guess technically they made the reveal earlier in the show too. So also they did it more the dramatic irony route in
Right.
the show. So yeah, so in any case, but like there's not a lot up front, but you get everything on the back end, and then it's like, oh yeah, this all works really well, and it really makes sense why the characters like this and why this happens, and with the
Hmm.
backstory and everything. So yeah, basically in a long running series, you can kind of recover from the twist, I guess. Like the twist is
Right.
an element, and it's a lot of times the twist in a long running thing. If you're going to do a twist in a long running thing, it's going to be more of like your inciting incident
Hmm.
rather than like the ending. So it's in a completely, basically opposite role of a
Yeah.
book. Is it weird to say that the inciting incident is the opposite of the ending instead of the beginning? I think
No,
that's
no.
correct.
That
Yeah,
look, the inciting incident is the beginning. Like, because when we're
yeah.
talking a twist ending, we're talking a twist climax. I think.
Yeah, but it's not literally
Like,
giving the last page of your book. It's like, yeah,
exactly.
you because you have to explain a little bit after. You can't just go twist, cut, black screen,
Done.
black page.
And of course,
Um,
the less beginning you have, the less ending you can get away with. So, like, like you're saying in anthology stories, your twist can be the last panel is like, uh oh. turn around and your boyfriend's a werewolf. Like,
I mean, I've done my fair share of twist ending anthologies. It's actually mainly what I do for anthologies because I
like I
think
say, it's a good strap for a good old bold
absolutely.
ending.
But yeah, when it comes earlier, it's very much like, okay, this is now going to be where we build the story from versus yeah, it's basically an inverted way that you look at it. If you're looking at a twist ending, you're looking at how do I build to this twist. If you're looking at like a twist middle, you're looking at how do I build from this twist. You still will have probably some how do I build to this twist.
He did wordplay, so it's profound.
Yeah, that's what I always do in this to make myself sound like I know what the fuck I'm talking about when I actually don't. But yeah, I don't know. How do you look at it differently? But I think that's also why in comics you see more like twist middles because with limited space, like comic books, it's much easier to explain out versus than like build.
And like it's such a like rich and interesting plot moment to happen. So like you want to spend time with it. But I think that it really does serve its function. I prefer a twist that's like built to, even if it's like a again like an in-text twist where you have dramatic irony going on, because that's my cup of tea, because I feel like then you're kind of along for the ride, as opposed to having to reveal, because I'm not like the biggest reveal hound. Maybe it's because I just haven't had the right dramatic reveal yet. But it's like I like
Invincible, but it wouldn't be as dramatic when
it would be not dramatic at all.
Yeah,
it's like the thing of it.
I'm getting to that point now where I know that this is.
It's just like, oh, I finished the first 6 issues. I wonder what this standalone issue will be.
I wonder why all of the Guardians are getting little short, intros for each of them all of a sudden.
I wonder why they're making me care about these characters all of a sudden. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of like rich and interesting stuff in the twist. And when you're doing the twist beforehand, that's why I like to have that dramatic irony, because you can explore those like rich and interesting bits of plot before you get to it. And then you have like the reveal happen for your character, and that goes all well and good and whatnot. I also think something that works well in comics is like a nice cliffhanger moment, like just to continue with our time traveling daughter.
So big in comics.
We've got a like beautiful issue 5. She's like, "Wait, I'm your daughter," and it's like, "What? She traveled from the future." And then with issue 6, you like pick up there, and it's like, okay, now we're gonna get 5 pages of her world and what's happening there. And I think that's a really good way to use a twist where you can then dedicate it page space, and then you get like that kind of almost like a mini climax, and then you have to finish your plot off, which is also a kind of difference in types of twists, where one is a very character motivated twist with like, oh, the emotional fallout of my daughter traveling from the future, and the other one is, wait, I'm your daughter, so I know how to cross these wires or whatever, which is like the very plotty plot twist, which I guess is the difference between a plot twist and a character twist. Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I prefer a very character motivated twist. So having that like chunk of space dedicated to it, I think, is a really wonderful thing to utilize. And you can do that in like an evil way as well, because typically with a villain, it's like, oh, I'm your daughter and I'm going to shoot you. It's like you can have that like reveal there, but I feel like with a lot of times when it's a negative twist, like a not happy twist, it's like, all right, give him a second to monologue. We're fine with the monologue. And then, your detective, because he's a hard-boiled detective, punches him in the teeth or something.
Because Kate loves a good noir.
I love a good noir. Look, just because that man is holding a gun doesn't mean that my fedora-wearing dude can't punch him in the teeth, which will obviously make him throw his gun asunder.
Yeah.
That's physics.
That's physics. That's just straight physics. But I think you mentioned something really important there, was just like, especially with it not having to be the actual ending, like the way that twists play into cliffhangers in the medium of comic books is incredibly important, because cliffhangers are incredibly important to comic books. I don't know if there's a medium that utilizes cliffhangers more than comic books. Like, it is quite common for literally every single comic book in a series to end in a cliffhanger in some way, shape, or form, because it's just the how do we get them back in the store next month, and it's like that's how.
That's how.
So yeah, I think like you mentioned, like a twist ending doesn't have to be the ending. So I definitely think, especially with something like we're talking about the future thing, where it makes sense to end off issue 3 with that, and then like issue 4 is going to be the fallout and the actual ending of the series, and that works well. But I think the other important thing there is don't be the people that don't actually follow up on it. Don't be the people who spend the next like 12 pages of the next issue or even the entire next issue just being like, la-di-la, here's this other thing happening over here, or here's like 6 months in the future, and then like maybe in like 3 more issues we'll explain to you what the fuck happened. It's like, don't do that.
I will say, I am a sucker for big cliffhanger ending. Start of next one is like 3 months later, but then you obviously, in that issue, go back and do it. I think the displays that really well.
Follow up. Like, the one thing I'll give you is if you're like gonna give me the build to that from the other end, like you said, like if you're now gonna go to the daughter in the future to like show how she ended up going back in time, because essentially that is answering it, but just like with the lead in. That I'm cool with. You don't have to pick up from that moment, but very much pick up from that plot point. I don't want you to be like, here's this other thing so I can bide time, before I actually...
That's fair. But like, I'm not gonna lie, I love a good like end of issue 3, a gun goes off, start of issue 3, it's like,
you don't see the person.
Someone's not sitting at the table.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, the rough thing for me is like, it's just a thing of like, if I've been waiting all month and I'm like super excited, I'm like, oh my god, this cliffhanger, like I'm so excited for it, and then I open it up and I'm not getting like the thing. I don't know if there's something in the medium that like disappoints me more than that. Like that is like the most disappointing feeling in the medium for me.
I think I give it the issue. It's like, as long as it's resolved in the issue.
I mean, that's super fair for you. I'm just saying, for me, that's super dead on arrival. It's like
reasonable minds and all that. But I think the twist ending of our podcast is that we're doing it the exact same way we normally do. Sometimes there's not a twist, and it's just the format.
We're going to say the twist ending is that next Wednesday we don't have...
Oh, that is a twist ending. So cliffhanger for y'all, because we don't have our regularly scheduled programming. Jay, what's happening next Wednesday?
Yeah, so we're inversing next week, because next Wednesday is Christmas. It is Christmas. That is correct. Which means it's going to be our Christmas special tier list video. Which Kate still needs to give me the list of so that I can actually read them. I just remembered in this moment. But then that Saturday, where we usually do our bonus episodes, is where our regular, weekly episode will go up. So it's just inverted. Then this Saturday, we have our normally scheduled Massiverse bonus episode, which is going to be the first volume of The Dead Lucky. Maybe the only volume of The Dead Lucky.
I believe it's the only volume.
Okay, so it's going to be issues 1 through 6 of The Dead Lucky. But we have things that have just gone up. Katie, what went up this past Saturday?
That's right. We had our strange Saturday Sunday is Super Show, where we talked about... I have it right here. We talked about John Layman and Rob Guillory's Chew, Volume 1. Spoiler alert, we both love Chew. This was super rad. Neither of us had read it before. Before Jay proposed it, neither of us even knew the plot of it. It's certainly strange. It's certainly super.
I saw something I'd heard of, and I went,
super duper rad. So go check that out. And also, not this coming Saturday, because, leading up to the holidays, but tune in on future Saturdays or rewind to past Saturdays. We've been streaming Marvel Rivals on Saturday mornings.
It's true. And you can find it on both Twitch and our gaming channel, both linked in this episode. I am on YouTube, my perspective, and the same, streams, but from Katie's perspective, are on Twitch. But what we did forget to do is mention what books we were doing on our regular episode that's coming out a week from Saturday.
Yes.
Katie, can you tell us about those polls?
Oh, absolutely. It is a good week, brother. We've got Arcbound number 2, The Moon is Following Us number 4, Nightwing 121. We have TMNT number 5. That works. Good job. We have Ultimate Spider-Man number 12, and we're looking at the Green Lantern and Green Arrow World's Finest Special, which is a one-shot special in the World's Finest universe. Which is technically modern continuity as well. It's weird.
Time period.
Time period. That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
I
was about to say timeline, but like, nope, that's the same thing. It's like time period.
Time period. So the yesteryear of the current DC universe.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, very excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's everything. So hopefully, despite our weird schedule, we'll still see you next week. Comic Geeks.